gather round your TV set, put on your masks, and watch. All witches, all skeletons, all jack-o'-lanterns.
The third
gather
commercial,
round
it's
and
still on,
watch.
please.
Watch
Take off the
magic
third channel,
pumpkin.
the third channel, it's still running.
Watch.
Stop it, please, for God's sake, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to, please, stop it now, turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy, heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. They can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, or something probably still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and the bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And joining me again in the Bear Cave, and again very soon after the last time, is Mr. Jay Yospa. Jay, thank you for joining me again.
Hey, Steve. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
I know it's been so long. It feels like one episode, basically.
Yeah, I know.
We did, in our last episode together, we had Bill Zanowitz on as well, and we talked about the classic 1978 John Carpenter's Halloween. The first one, the original one, the one that kicked off the massive franchise that lasted, gosh, was it 40 years, I think, between the first movie and the last one, Halloween Ends?
Yeah.
It's wild. 40 years of movies. Although some of them were better received than others, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But this movie today is one of those earlier sequels to Halloween, if it's truly a sequel. And Jay, what movie is that we're going to be talking about?
We are going to be discussing Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
And it has a reputation for good or bad as being a very unique entry into the Halloween franchise. I know that before watching it for this, I had never seen the entire movie straight through.
Right.
I'd only seen clips on retrospectives of 80s movies and horror movies and things like that because some of the imagery is very distinct and is famous.
Very much so.
What is this movie about? And then we can kind of dig into, why it's so different from the other Halloween movies. But what's kind of if you can give a plot synopsis, what happens in this one?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you might know this guy. His name's Michael Myers. A few people have heard of him. He will not be showing up in this movie. This movie, for better or worse, begins with somebody that's on the run who looks like they could be running from a masked serial killer, but they're being pursued by some mysterious agency, I guess we'll say. Guy gets attacked, winds up in a hospital. This brings in our protagonist, Dr. Chalice. The guy then is murdered in the hospital by some unknown assailant who then goes out in the parking lot and immolates himself in his car. And it thus begins the mystery of who was after this guy, what happened to him, who's behind it, and all that good stuff.
All throughout this movie, too, there's one thing that keeps popping up, even before we really know what's behind everything. We hear a certain, what is that? A jingle, maybe? Or an advertisement or commercial that keeps playing pretty much every 5 to 10 minutes in this movie.
It will get stuck in your head by the time you finish watching it. And it's not London Bridge. It's Silver Shamrock.
It starts off kind of similar, like you would expect, okay, this might be a slasher, but, the assailants don't brandish any weapons. They're just basically, silent and strangly.
Yeah, they are the weapon. Yeah.
And the first death that we see with that gentleman who's being chased in the hospital, the guy, whatever this nameless besuited figure, basically comes up to him, holds him down, and pulls his skull apart.
Yeah, from the outside. Yeah.
From the outside.
Yeah. It's not pretty.
I mean, I felt that pain right there. I mean, the Foley work in this movie is very early 80s, overdone. So everybody's footsteps sound like they're tap dancing. The bone crunching of the skull being pulled apart was very traumatic. Yes. Yeah, you could feel it. Yeah, you could feel it yourself. Can we discuss the fact that
first of all, we have this deserted hospital trope that happens in some of these movies. And I myself have never been in a hospital that's been that short of personnel. It's definitely not a large metropolitan hospital, but it's very minimalist. There's not much going on there.
No, there's basically it's Dr. Chalice and one nurse who he like gooses at one point. I'm like, well,
yes.
Yeah. I guess, it was a different time when your boss could basically squeeze your ass cheeks and you just laugh it off.
Uh-huh.
But, there's almost nobody else in this hospital until you notice maybe like down on the ground floor, there's like a couple, like, other people, a nurse and maybe a few patients waiting. But their whole wing is empty. And nobody notices this guy walk in and just walk straight into a patient's room.
Right. And did you notice the room number?
Oh, no, I didn't.
It was 13.
There you go. Unlucky for him.
I guess all the other ones were full, right?
They must have been. Not even a floor number. It's just number 13.
Yes, pretty much.
So Dr. Dan, obviously right off the bat, something's really crazy about this. He wants to investigate it, which seems right away kind of, I'd say pretty good-hearted of him. But part of me thinks that he just wants to get away from his kids.
Or his wife.
His ex-wife.
Who's played by
Nancy Loomis.
Yes. Who we just talked about in our last episode.
Exactly. She played Annie, one of the first victims of Michael Myers. And she has a very distinctive voice. So she's immediately recognizable. Even if her hair is a little bit different and she's a little bit older, it's pretty clear it's her.
Yeah. I wasn't able to tell, and I'm still not 100% sure, but I felt like they were already estranged. Like I didn't get the impression they were happy up until that moment. Like it already seemed like things were either falling apart or he didn't spend much time at home or whatever.
Yeah, I kind of thought that as a character, he's kind of an interesting protagonist in that he doesn't seem like that great of a family guy. He's got 2 kids he barely ever sees.
Right.
He's clearly having fun with other people. And so it sounds like they've been separated for a while, maybe. And it just didn't work out.
Even Tom Atkins says in the documentary about the making of that, what kind of doctor is this that he's playing? He runs off with some young girl and he's going to investigate a murder or whatever. What kind of doctor is he? It's a little strange.
He's got like a 6-pack of beer at pretty much at all times. You're like, interesting guy. But speaking of the young girl, she happens to be the daughter of the gentleman who's murdered at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
Her name is Ellie, and her father ran basically like a toy shop, novelty shop that also sells Halloween costumes and Halloween masks.
Yeah.
Which brings in more of this like silver shamrock concept, like, oh, here's all these silver shamrock masks, and Dan's kids, they love their silver shamrock masks. And so, there's something constantly being, pushed at the viewer. It's like, these masks are special. There's something about these. There's something about the company. And as you're getting sick of hearing the jingle over and over and over again, something's obviously being presented and hinted the entire time.
And by this point in the movie, which is pretty early, you've already been exposed to the commercial or the song several times. It's not they're not subtle about it at all.
No. And then it eventually sends Dan and Ellie up to where the factory is, the Silver Shamrock factory, which is where her father was right before he was brought to the hospital and was murdered. And it's this little town, Santa Mira, that's up in somewhere in like central California. And that's very tiny, small town. Everybody kind of knows everybody else. It's kind of creepy. And the big industry in the town is Silver Shamrock, even though they don't employ anybody who actually lives in the town.
According to the town drunk, anyway.
According to town drunk, yeah. It's pretty much built up like a Willy Wonka type of situation. And you're introduced to him first, as a drive-by character, but everybody's talking about him, and that's Mr. Cochran,
yes.
Who seems to basically own the town because he owned Silver Shamrock. And he built this business right after World War II, became the only business in town really, and he brought in all these outside employees, outside personnel to run it, and has just been making money hand over fist. In fact, I think one of the other characters at one point says, like, he's one of the richest men in America and all these things, and you're like, this guy for making toys and novelties and stuff?
We're not quite at that point yet, but it's interesting that you said about Willy Wonka, because I actually put in my notes that when they go for when our main characters go for the factory tour, I got such a Willy Wonka vibe with the kid, with Buddy Jr., because he's like, right away, he's like one of those impatient kids. Like, can we see how the masks are made? Am I going to get one of these masks? That's like a character straight out of Willy Wonka.
Just waiting for him to, walk into a dicing machine or something where the latex, the big vat of boiling latex, and then have some little people come out and sing a song about it.
Yes, exactly. Or turn into a giant blueberry or a pumpkin for that matter.
Yeah, a giant pumpkin. Like, this would be the perfect time for him to be a giant pumpkin.
Yeah.
And, pumpkin does factor into how he does end, though.
Yes.
But, there's just a lot of interesting stuff. And, of course, once they get to the town, once they get to the factory, a lot of stuff is revealed pretty quickly. And you get to see a couple more pretty gruesome deaths, some shockingly gruesome deaths.
Yeah.
Including one of the toy store owners that's there to ask about an order. She, investigates the little tag, and she ends up getting her face basically lasered.
Yeah.
Ooh, so gross.
That was very much an 80s effect too, that sort of beam there's a lot of that in this. I mean, there's definitely a lot of that, especially towards the end of the movie, but it's fun. I mean, the reason I love this movie so much is just I completely take it out of the Halloween context. I do have it as part of a box set, so I know it's, part of the history and everything. But to me, it's just a great, fun little 80s movie. Got its share of action, and it's got some decent effects for the time and everything. And I think Herlihy, Dan Herlihy, I think is the actor's name that plays Donald Cochran. I think he's fantastic. When he wants to be genial, he's really comes across as a very nice and warm, character, and he never gets reduced to a cackling bad guy kind of thing, a real caricature. And I really like that. It's a little bit subtle. He knows what he's doing. He's out to create complete mayhem or whatever, but he's very controlled about it. And I think that actor did a fantastic job in that role.
I really agree with that. I think for a villain character, he really doesn't come across as this sinister, or twirling his mustache at any point. Yeah. I mean, he just seems like this very friendly, vaguely British gentleman, with an Irish name in an Irish, themed town, who just has this horrific plan for the children of America that also involves one of the rocks at Stonehenge, which. Yeah. In terms of Chekhov's gun type tropes, you see something on a TV in the bar where Dr. Dan goes early in the movie, where somebody's like, yeah, we have no idea how an entire rock from Stonehenge just disappeared.
In the bar also you see commercials for the original Halloween movie, which I thought was fun. I guess it was a TV. I guess it was probably coming on television or something, and that's what they were advertising. I don't think it was the original movie in the theaters. I could be wrong, but I thought I got the impression maybe it was being aired on television.
You are actually 100% right, because when they part of the conceit about this jingle from Silver Shamrock is that on Halloween night at 9 p.m. following a horror movie marathon, there's going to be a prize for, somebody. There's some kind of prize giveaway, some kind of special giveaway. The kids just have to sit really close to the TV and watch for 9 o'clock with their masks on, and everything will be revealed. But the movie that is playing is John Carpenter's Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a couple scenes from it, just randomly during that time frame where things are starting to happen towards the climax. So, pretty clever. It was a pretty clever way of showing it, but also it does help take this movie out of that film's of the original Halloween's continuity, because in this world,
it's a movie.
John Carpenter's Halloween is just a movie.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not real. So
right.
But yeah, I mean, I thought that was really clever. It was a fun way to throw it in there and throw back to the original film. No mention about Halloween 2, though, for some reason. Even though I think half the production crew, if not more, worked on that one as well. So like Dean Cundy as the DOP, and I think even the head of costumes was also worked on Halloween 2. A lot of them were brought in specifically because they worked on that movie by Deborah Hill, who was still a producer on this.
Yep.
And, it almost was sort of an old home week kind of situation where a lot of people who worked on the first two movies, or at least one of the first two movies, also came and worked on this one. So it was a lot of the same people behind the camera.
Yep. Yeah, they said that Deborah Hill was a very loyal person, that she was good about rehiring back people that had worked on previous productions and things like that.
I mean, that's the kind of producer you want to work for. You want somebody who's going to remember your name and want to work with you again. And it sounds like she does that. Which is great quality in a producer. But it sounded like it was a really fun, just like the original Halloween, it was a fun movie to work on. The actors loved it.
Yes.
And the production crew were like, everybody was so much fun to work with. We loved it. We loved working with the director. We loved working with the actors. Everyone was cool. So I think the expectations on this were a little bit different. It had a different, kind of a different direction for it. Because obviously there's no Michael Myers. There's a really like crazy supernatural witchcraft sort of thing that's going on mixed with technology. Technology is being used with magic to create mayhem. And then also humanoid robots
who spew pinkish, nasty looking stuff out of their mouths when they're dismembered or attacked.
There's that one scene where Dr. Dan punches one, he pulls his hand out and it's just goop. And you're like, whoa, that camera angle could have been a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, very, very different. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that it started out being written as a very different type of movie. With the original writer hired for it was Nigel Neal, who, Hammer Studios royalty, and the creator or the original writer for the Quatermass series over in the UK.
You can see the sci-fi influence there.
That was one thing that I did notice. There is a feel to it of a British sci-fi horror film. It kind of has like that Doctor Who quality, that early 80s and 70s Doctor Who quality, with just some of the things that they put in it, like human robots and, sinister toy makers, basically. Like it's very like UK kind of horror, TV horror. But unfortunately, Universal didn't really like the original script much, and they brought Neil in, and they brought Deborah Hill and John Carpenter, who were also producers, obviously, on this film. And we're talking about it, and they had some criticisms. And Nigel Neal, I think one of the quotes I got was that he had a chip on his shoulder for Hollywood, and when they started saying, hey, how about you change this? He basically said, hey, how about you eat these nuts? And like ran off back to England and was like, screw this. Yeah. I cannot stand criticism. Don't you know who I am? Right. I'm gone.
Right.
And had his name removed. Like he was just like, do not mention that I had anything to do with this movie, which is why we're mentioning it now.
Right.
So, of course, John Carpenter was like, well, I'll help out. He started rewriting it. Didn't really go too well. And so they brought Tommy Lee Wallace, who was a production designer for the original Halloween, also worked on The Fog. He worked on Assault on Precinct 13, Dark Star. Like he'd been a John Carpenter dude for a while.
Yeah, I guess they were childhood friends as well.
So they brought him in. Universal did, because he had done some work for him writing Amityville 2, and they liked that. So they had him work on this, and apparently he rewrote a lot of what John Carpenter rewrote and kept a good chunk of what Nigel Neal had originally, put together. So
yeah.
And since Joe Dante, who was originally attached, dropped out, they were like, "You want it?" And he was like, "Yes, I definitely want to direct it."
Yeah, of course. I mean, who wouldn't? With the previous two.
Oh, absolutely. And Carpenter, he stayed on as a producer, but also did the music, and the music is fantastic. Just this really cool synth, perfect for early 80s, but also super creepy and different enough from the original Halloween and Halloween 2 soundtracks that it becomes its own thing.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the Silver Shamrock ad, which...
No.
But I mean, everybody who worked on this was really excited for it. They thought they were doing something really cool, doing something really different. What did Tommy Lee Wallace call it? In all of the interviews that I read with him from, contemporary interviews, as well as some of the more recent interviews, he was like, it's a pod movie, not a knife movie. And what he meant by that was that it was more like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of situation. So more sci-fi horror than, just a dude with a knife slashing.
Right.
And I think that started kind of the problem.
Yeah. As far as the box office and all that kind of stuff goes.
Yeah. And why don't we talk about that reception of this movie? Or maybe like even the lead up of how it was presented to the movie-going public. Here it is. It's Halloween 3. So people expect something from it. Something very large and shapely.
Yes.
That they're not getting.
Right. And Carpenter's name is attached to it. They're not hiding that. So
yeah, he's a producer.
Yeah.
I know you had seen a lot of the previews. You'd watched a lot of the previews for it. How was it presented in those previews?
The TV spots and stuff I saw definitely did not lead you to believe that Michael Myers was a part of it. I didn't notice any scenes that didn't make it into the movie. So it definitely gave you a completely different vibe. I just don't know. Maybe they just didn't advertise enough and people just went by word of mouth that, oh, here's the third Halloween movie. And so didn't really truly have a concept of what it was about. But something didn't quite work as far as the expectations versus what people wound up seeing.
And I know that they had some pretty cool tie-ins for this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Tommy Lee Wallace at one point later, we're talking about like at least 1 year later after the whole thing had been released and everything, had been talking about how when he was walking through the Universal commissary, the executives that had brought him on that were so excited to have him direct this movie and work on this movie wouldn't even, look him in the eye. And he was like, who knows if I'll ever have anything as high profile again. He did. He went on to make some other great stuff, but it was a pretty big impact. And he does complain and say Universal didn't really know how to market it well.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had pushed more that this Halloween movie was not a traditional one, that it was a traditional one. And there had only been 2, but I mean, they've been huge. But that this was like an anthology. Like he said, it was more like a Night Shift or Twilight Zone than, like a slasher movie featuring the same guy. So if they had pushed that angle more, maybe it would have done a little bit better or attracted a different initial audience.
Yeah.
But he thinks that Universal was like, we don't know what to do with this. So we're just going to get as many butts and seats as we can for the first weekend. And then whatever happens, happens. And they got a big opening. They got a huge opening where they made all their money back and more. But compared to the first 2, no. Return on investment was not as enormous. And then also after the first week, it just went, ticket sales.
Yeah, and they learned the hard way that the anthology thing was not what people wanted. They wanted Michael Myers.
They did, and they eventually got a whole bunch more. The rights reverted back to the original rights holder. It sat around for a couple of years, and then they came out with Halloween 4 and the slew of films after that.
Like a lot of things after a long amount of time, I think it's gotten its due. It's sort of become a cult classic that more people appreciate it now for being something different. So I'm glad that over time the perception has changed on the movie quite a bit. For a lot of people, I wouldn't say for everybody. I don't think you're probably in that demographic. But I was happy. I'm real happy with what we got because it took a while, but it really became. I wouldn't say that I watch it every year. I've certainly seen it plenty of times, but I still enjoy it. It just has such a weird combo of different things. I mean, you got the androids, you got more graphic violence in it than you had in the first Halloween, as far as gore goes. And it's just all over the place. But I just think it's just normal, wacky 80s kind of fun horror.
And see, that's the thing. I think on its own merits, like if you took off the name Halloween and you just said season of the witch, 1982 season of the witch, I think it would fit in really well with the slew of unique, interesting, kind of wacky, kind of out there 80s horror movies.
Yeah.
where it just kind of stands on its own and, destined to be a cult classic, that kind of thing, where it's not like weighed down by the fact that it's part of this franchise. My personal opinions on whether it was a great movie that I love or not, aside, it definitely was really unique and had a really interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell it from just certain choices that they made, the actors that they chose. I mean, Tom Atkins as Dr. Dan, I mean, he's not a traditional choice for like your lead, and I think he does great. I love him. I think he's a fun guy. I've seen a couple other movies with him, and off the screen too. He's also a very likable guy. But and then also the actress who played Ellie,
Stacey Nelkin,
she did a great job as well.
Yep.
I mean, she just, for a character that I'm sure she had to like work to kind of, bring out some personality for the character. I think she did a great job. There is that sort of like that weird twist towards the end, which I actually don't think is much of a twist. I know there's like some speculation. Was she a robot the whole time kind of thing?
Right.
I don't think so. I think it was just
once they grabbed her.
Yeah, once they grabbed her, she's a goner, and they replaced her body.
Yeah.
Because she immediately, like, as soon as he rescues her, she's a totally different type of person. Like, she's acting totally weird.
When they're trying to leave and stuff and escape, she doesn't have much to say. She's just kind of following him.
Right. And that's not who she was the whole first part of the movie.
No, she was a little tougher than that.
The villain, I think the villain's really well done, really great, really great character, of course, acted very well. And then, like you mentioned, the gore is it's pretty extreme. And they kill a kid. Like you don't see that very often in horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially not on screen, something like that happening. And it's not necessarily a gory death for him, but it is a very clear, horrific end.
Yeah.
And of course the, potentially very dark ending of this movie that's left ambiguous, but maybe not that ambiguous.
Nah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on how you feel about it, but there's a lot of unexplained stuff too. Like, how did if it just was a matter of like the masks melting to their faces and killing them, it'd be one thing. But you've got bugs, you've got snakes, things just coming out of the mask, which don't want to say doesn't have any grounding in reality, because obviously what we're talking about, but it's an interesting choice to make, to have kind of all these creepy things like explode out of the mask or out of the person. I mean, we don't really know what's going on there.
See, it's one of those weird things where I think it was implied, because this is it's ancient witchcraft, it's ancient pagan ritual, that maybe it's like conjuring these creatures out of these people, and because it's a mask, it's conjuring them out of their heads, which is horrifying.
Right.
And of course, it's not just that. The snakes that come out of poor little Buddy are also poisonous and attack the father, Big Buddy.
Well, only one of them is the one rattlesnake. I did happen to notice that they use different types of snakes, and most of the bugs were just crickets, which were pretty easy to get in quantity. Yeah. And the thing is, well, we assume they're all dead, but it seems to me like the mom just faints. So I'm not sure how she actually dies, but it's implied that the whole family is killed.
Right. She might have had, it could have been a heart attack or something. Because afterwards you do see her and she's like covered with snakes. You're just crawling over.
Yeah, that's true. They did show some snakes around her afterwards.
So presumably she didn't make it either. But it's traumatic seeing their child's head like basically explode full of bugs and snakes and stuff. I think that with the elements in this movie together, like taken together, they're very creepy. They're very weird. It's good horror, a good supernatural horror, mixed with sort of like that sort of digital age, sort of coming up on technology being everywhere, using that as sort of a means to create supernatural mayhem as well. So like TV signals and computer chips that are made with pieces of Stonehenge, and this conjuration magic, and
Stonehenge
it's
dust.
really Stonehenge dust. A little particle is all it takes.
Yeah, exactly. Just sprinkled in there like fairy dust.
But I think those elements make it a pretty interesting horror movie, and especially that time period. It could fit in very well with like a Watcher in the Woods kind of movie, or something Wicked This Way Comes. If we're going back to the 70s, like there's something in this sort of era that this movie fits in very, very well. That sort of supernatural horror with very sort of out there elements. And I think on those merits, it works really well. But like from
a Halloween aspect, it definitely, and it does have a little bit of a ABC movie of the week sort of feel to it. Also, a little bit of a TV movie kind of thing.
Yeah, there's some of that because some of the set pieces are pretty straightforward. Like it was filmed the small town that they filmed it in. Oh, and they named the town. I thought that was really kind of clever. Tommy Lee Wallace named the small town where Silver Shamrock is Santa Mira, which is the exact name of the town in the original 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay, I did not know that.
So he was like, "Oh yeah," so it's part of his whole like this is a pod movie, and he connects it back to that film.
Yeah,
and sort of like the idea of like creatures or non-human entities sort of taking over a town or a village and making this sort of strange place.
There's a lot of interesting things about that town, though. So do you assume that everybody working in the factory was an automaton, was a android or something, even the women in the office? Because I didn't get that feel from them.
Yeah, maybe not the women in the office. The women in the office seemed pretty normal.
Yeah.
But certainly everybody who's like no facial expression working in the molding, working in the lab, the technicians.
Yeah.
And of course all of the truck drivers and the dudes in suits just standing around looking creepy and weird.
I mean, it's very weird to think like, okay, let's assume the drunk guy was correct in that, there was really almost no townspeople working at the factory. They're willingly subjecting themselves to a curfew, like at 8:00 at night. And everybody praises this guy, but if he's not hiring from the local populace, I guess he's still somehow bringing money into the town. I don't know.
Yeah. Either that or they're just so afraid of him. But that's not what the townspeople seem to be.
Yeah.
Like they're just singing his praises more than, oh, I'd better be nice or else he's going to get me.
Right.
Which the town drunk, I mean, I'm assuming that he's been breaking curfew for quite a while.
Yeah.
Before he gets his head pulled off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He gets ripped right off of his body. No fanfare. Kind of, there it goes.
There goes an end. But yeah, and I think the intentions, again, making this movie was that it was going to be part of an anthology, that, everything was going to be this idea of a one and done, like a unique story that just takes place around the concept of Halloween. And then it's just going to be something new after that. Like a new creep show or, an anthology film or anything like that, but just a long form anthology film. And unfortunately, this kind of killed that idea, at least with the Halloween franchise. Because anthology films are definitely popular. I mean, I have to say, I love the VHS movies, and those are, again, series
some
of
very successful anthology movies for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Creep Show, VHS, Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, all of these films, who've also beget TV series too. But unfortunately, it did not work here, or at least at the time, just the public had seen Creep Show, because Creep Show came out in the same year, and was extremely popular. And they just didn't really know how to react to something like this.
Right. And you're not getting short stories within a long story, in an arc kind of format. It's just strictly that one story taking up the whole time.
Tom Atkins, though, he was also in Creep Show.
Yeah. Well, who did he play in Creep Show?
The father of the little boy who was reading the comics that the Creep Show stories were.
Oh, yeah.
He gets his comeuppance at the end as well.
Yeah.
He takes the comic away from the boy.
I'm a huge fan of the second one. I do like the first one, but the second one is more memorable to me. So I always have to think back to which segments were in the first one.
Interesting. The second one has
more of
an impression for you.
The Raft
is a great story.
Fantastic, yeah.
That is a great story.
And I got kind of a weird, dark humor laugh kind of out of the whole "Thanks for the ride, lady" part with the hitchhiker in the second movie.
Oh, but yeah. So for this, reception was relatively poor. Reviews were relatively poor. It apparently did okay in France because it was marketed a little bit differently.
Right.
So it was marketed not as part of the Halloween franchise, but as essentially what they wanted it to be marketed like in the US as well, where it's like, this is a standalone anthology type movie around the concept of Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people in France were like, cool, that works for us.
Yeah.
So,
It was all in the marketing.
Yeah, it's all in the marketing. And again, 30 years later, 40 years later, it did find an audience that, appreciates it for what it is. Fans who love it for being a unique concept, and even though it's part of this franchise, that it does something very different. There's some cool things too tying in with this movie that I think are pretty neat. One of them is the masks themselves. Mm-hmm. Don Post produced those masks. Don Post, who became famous and pretty lucrative business in the 70s when he started making movie tie-in masks. In the early 70s with, I believe it was Planet of the Apes, was the first series of masks that they produced.
Okay.
Based on a film. And then they also got the license for Star Wars. So their Darth Vader mask was one of the top-selling sort of tie-in pieces of merchandise to Star Wars for years after they had started producing it. And these were masks that were $60 plus each. And that's $60 in 1970s money.
Right.
Which today is over like $200. So like they were selling like hotcakes. I mean, because they were good replicas. And so for this, 1982, they were also making a lot of ET masks. So, ew, gross, but also sold really well. But these masks were made in conjunction with the film crew. So like they basically looked at these designs and were like, these are perfect designs. I want to say the Witch and the Skull already existed as designs for Don Post.
Yeah.
But the pumpkin mask was unique for this film. But they produced these massively, and they actually put out, before Halloween as part of the marketing campaign for this film. Probably the only successful part of the marketing campaign is that they were selling these masks, and they had, contests and all sorts of things to get these masks and the images of these three masks out there. Which, by the way, weird bit of trivia that Tommy Lee Wallace talked about. He calls them, and in the movie they call them the Halloween 3, like the 3.
Yeah.
But it's Halloween 3, so tie into the title.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Cute. It's cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean these masks were just really a cool thing, and they are exactly the same as they appear in the film. So it wasn't like just sort of like a cheap knockoff. I mean, these are the people who were producing the masks for the movie. They produced those same masks for sale. Right. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they definitely have an iconic look.
And, that's something I think that, talking about what was successful about this movie in 82 and what wasn't, I think that was a really cool idea. But yeah, so scary moments. Do you have a particular favorite moment from this movie?
There is a musical jump scare when Tom Atkins' character is trying to break into the factory. That's just like, it just comes out of nowhere. And Bill and I were both watching it 2 nights ago. And I think it got both of us. Like we were just, I guess I had forgotten about it, but there's nothing that happens. He's just trying to get into this factory, but it's just this loud, musical cue that just gets you. I mean, as far as the visuals and stuff, it's all pretty cool. I think the revelation of what Mrs. Gutman looks like after she got zapped by that thing was pretty gnarly. So as far as like nasty looking stuff, I think that was up there for sure.
I would agree that was pretty gross. I wasn't expecting to be able to see it. I thought that was one of those things, this happens off camera. We're not going to get to see it. Or, we're going to see sort of like a camera perspective where there's smoke rising from the corpse, but you don't see what actually happened to the face or anything like that. But no, full on, you do get to see it. I think probably one of the few moments where it was maybe a bit of a jump scare was early in the movie where Mr. Grimsbridge, who's the gentleman who ends up getting murdered early on, where he's running and hiding in the junkyard, or the auto yard. And he's thinking that he's done a good job hiding from the car of people who've been following him, and he backs up against what was a fence. Like, you see that there was nothing there. It was just a fence beforehand. And he backs up, and there's just some dude just appears. And
Right.
that I think that was like, I was not expecting it. I know it's something
Yes.
that people should be expecting, because it's like, of course, you back up and you're not looking where you're going.
Right.
Somebody's going to
Yeah.
come behind. But I wasn't expecting that. I actually was like, as a jump. And then also, in terms of visuals and stuff, I think what happened to little Buddy was
Yeah.
a bit of a shock, because again, people don't kill kids on screen usually in horror movies. That's kind of one of those weird taboo things, but this one they did. I mean, he's clawing at the mask trying to take it off, and it's like tearing, but like you could tell that something's happening to his face, and
Right.
as he drops to the ground, like snakes and bugs and all sorts of things start crawling out of his mouth.
Yeah.
But speaking of little Buddy, I mean, like, just kind of going from, topical. So years later, they interviewed him for a little documentary they did on the film that ended up, I think, on the collector's edition release. And yeah, he's looking pretty good. I mean, talk about sort of like Fireplug, Pocket Cub, just
Yeah.
beefy.
Yes. Ginger too.
Ginger with a ball cap, like, you're just, oh, yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, he did show up again in a fan-made sequel for this movie. And we were talking about right before, there are 2 fan-made sequels to Season of the Witch. And they're both available on YouTube. If you want to look them up, I'll have the links in the show notes. But the most recent one is called The Third Channel. And it's a fan sequel produced by Michelle Blasky, I believe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that just basically picks up with an heir to the Silver Shamrock fortune in relation to, just what may or may not be happening again 40 years after the original. So, and then the other fan film was, I think, came out in 2018, and that one again is also kind of a direct sequel that picks up right after what happens when the screen goes black. If you're interested in seeing what people have or what fans have thought happened after the events of that movie, definitely check them out, because you might be pleasantly surprised. I mean, these are fan films, so
right.
Not huge effects or, big names or anything in it. But I mean, you can tell that people do love this movie. This is a cult movie, of course. So someone's going to want to figure out what happens next.
I think it's weird because in some ways it's more infamous being part of the Halloween thing. Like, I bet you more people talk about this than, let's say, like Halloween 5. You know what I mean? Like, some of the more generic sequels, I feel like more people might be aware of this specific movie because of the fact that what it didn't do. So yeah, it's kind of ironic in a way, because in a way it's become more infamous because it didn't really fit in with the rest of the sometimes not as exciting as other sequels.
Right. And I do have to say, though, they have referenced this film in some of the later, I guess the more recent Blumhouse reboot films. I think there's like, the masks either show up, or there's like a Silver Shamrock reference somewhere, blink and you miss it kind of thing. So I would hope that filmmakers who are currently making any additional Halloween sequels or planning additional Halloween sequels. I know Blumhouse is no longer making them. They did talk recently to confirm that the rights have reverted. They made their 3 and they're done.
Yeah.
But, I think there's a little bit more of a willingness to embrace this movie as part of the legacy of Halloween than there hadn't been for a long time.
Right.
Because they were like, no, we got to focus on Michael Myers. Nobody likes anything that doesn't have Michael Myers.
Yeah. And I would still say, like, even if we never get another Halloween sequel, which, I mean, some of us would argue that we really don't need anymore. He's forever, enshrined in like the movie monsters Hall of Fame. I mean, almost everybody knows what that iconic sort of white face looks like. And, people that grew up when the most recent ones were just coming out, even now, like the Halloween stores and stuff, they all still have masks and things like that. So Michael Myers is kind of eternal. Talking
about a mask, I mean, this Halloween 3 is all about, these iconic masks. These masks hold power. These masks are, so special. Well, the original mask kind of surpasses all of them. And because that's what Michael Myers, like the look of Michael Myers is just is a mask, really.
Yep.
I mean, what else is he wearing? Like a blue onesie, and that's basically it. It's the mask that kind of makes that character.
Absolutely.
But the look of that character, obviously, the movements and things are very, very particular to the actor who's portraying him or the stuntman who's portraying him and under everything. But yeah, it's interesting that a horror movie about evil masks doesn't have the same kind of, evil impact as one dude with a mask. Again, I enjoyed watching this. I don't like it as much or love it as much as you do.
Yeah.
But I am very appreciative that I have now seen the movie and that, I got to hear you talk about how much you like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, it's fun.
So.
It's different. It's something a little different. Did you get the impression that Mr. Cochran was very old? Or do you think he just... Because when they were talking about his history, like as a toy maker and stuff, some of that stuff looked really old. So I never quite got an impression of whether he had lived beyond what normal people would live, or whether he was just an old dude who created, all these really cool, like clockwork things and stuff when he was much younger.
I mean, it's a good question because also, like, there's one point where he kind of implies that he was around 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
That he was actually there for the last big Samhain celebration that brought, like, darkness and whatever, sacrificed children and animals and all of that stuff. And it's like, how old is he really? Is he maybe just sort of somebody who is eternal? Somebody had mentioned, I think in one of the articles, it's like maybe he's actually a demon. Maybe this is just a disguise that he's wearing, and he's not really human. It's hard to say. He does imply that he has something to do with like this long line of witchcraft that goes back.
Yeah.
But whether he's someone who was one of those original practicers, or if he's just more, he's sort of developed this over time, and like this is his big master plan. That's not really clear, but I mean, it doesn't have to be. He's sinister enough.
No, it's fun to have some open questions, and his ending doesn't look quite like everybody else's does, so it's kind of hard to tell from that. The way he dies doesn't resemble the rest of the people in that building being just kind of killed by stray bolts of light. He almost turns into like a pillar of salt or something. It's very odd. He gets like his body gets all white because he's hit by like the stone and from the circle that's happening with these. It's a little different. It's a little different.
And I did want to mention this, and this is, and again, I think I've said this enough before in other episodes. I don't like harping on plot holes and things that are like, oh, maybe they should have rewritten that a little bit. The big thing that needs to be stopped is the 9 p.m. Broadcast of the commercial that's going to broadcast this pumpkin that's going to activate all the masks and, melt all the kids' faces and whatever. They're on the West Coast. So, like, is this 9 o'clock coast to coast? So, like, if it's 9 p.m. in the East Coast and all these kids' faces start melting off and exploding into frogs and snakes and bugs, somebody might get the idea, hey, let's stop all the broadcasts for everybody in the other time zones. Or is it just 9 o'clock California time, and so midnight, all the way in like New York and Florida, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, etc.
Yeah.
This is a Sunday night, so it's a school night, so I don't think these kids are going to be awake sitting in front of the TV for a commercial at midnight. So I don't, like, the time doesn't really work as a plot device so much, unless it was really only centered in California and the West Coast. But we know that it wasn't, because it shows kids all over the country with these masks on.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And when he's calling to try to stop it, he's not calling a network. He's calling the local television stations or whatever.
And of course, there's only 3 stations. So.
Yes. It's best not to think about some of these things.
But if you're talking about commercial TV, I guess there was really only 3 main networks. But what about all the indies that are unaffiliated? And oh my God, it's best not to think about it.
No. I don't think they wanted every child in the world to die. I think it was just, let's just kill a whole bunch of them because we got to bring back this ancient tradition. Whatever.
And a lot of those kids probably weren't wearing the masks. I don't think every kid in America was like, we only want to be one of 3 things.
Right.
for Halloween. It's 1982. There's still some Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman.
Of course. And when you're home after trick or treating, how many people are keeping their masks on? You're ready to take that thing off.
Especially that. That is like heavy, like that is good quality latex, which means it does not breathe. You are sweaty and sticky and gross under there after trick or treating for a couple hours.
Yeah. Probably not the most foolproof plan to murder people, but it's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one. It is. It's also a very like Doctor Who type plot to be frank, which makes sense. Nigel Neal. I really, appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I look forward to the next time that we talk about maybe something Halloween, maybe something else.
Yeah.
I mean, we went from Halloween 1 to Halloween 3. We haven't talked Halloween 2 yet.
That's right.
You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror. And if you haven't seen Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it's streaming on BCoT for all of October. And it's available digitally and on physical media if you'd like to purchase it. And Jay, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
You can reach me as Haunt Cub on Instagram, also on Blue Sky. And I'm also on the Life on the Shit List, or LOTSL Lotso podcast, which can be found on any podcast catcher.
And same thing for me and us at the Bear Cave of Terror. You can find us on Blue Sky and Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. And a list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, including links to those fan-made sequel films. And remember, it's 3 more days till Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 3 more days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Sorry, folks. Have a good night.
Where do you want to sleep, Dr. Chalice?
That's a dumb question, Miss Grimpage.